Good day. As you know, I am Kaylin, and today we're going to be starting a series on report writing. So we're going to just discuss some foundational things that you need to understand in order to do some report writing. Now generally, a person would always take a report that's currently there and you would just go and edit that. We're obviously not going to do that. We're going to create our own reports from scratch, and I'll explain as we go along, certain things that need to be filled in and all that jazz. So yes, so there's a few things we need to understand, and that is, where do we find what information? So there's a few important files that get used a lot in the reports, and here's a list of a few of them. Now obviously employees being the one that contains all your employee information, so that's the one that you're going to probably get the most information out of, depending obviously on the report that you want to create. You've obviously got your clockings as well, which has got clockings, your daily hours, your weekly hours file, which is your payroll hours, and then your errors and warnings, leave, your classification obviously has all your departments and cost centers, etc. And then you've also got your dates file, which can be used in reports as well, and that contains the hours that have been processed for a certain period there. Okay, so then the next thing that we need to just understand is that there are fields that have got certain pictures. We'll see as we create some local fields in the report, you can use certain pictures in order to put it in a human readable format. So if you had to go and open the clockings file in CScan for argument's sake, you would see that the clockings or the time and the date is not really in a format that's easy readable for us. So in that case, you might want to use a certain picture in order to put it as 8 o'clock, and actually display the time correctly there then. There is some pictures that we're going to use then. You'll see one that I'm going to just mention now is the @G, which is used to create the select all employees buttons, and then also the select one employee button at the bottom of your report when you're printing that. So I'll show you that then. The other thing is local and global fields. Now local fields are fields that you create that can only be used in that specific report, whereas a global field is one that can be seen and used in multiple reports. Now it's always recommended that you rather create a local field for the report, that when you create this field you aren't affecting any other reports, because if there is, for argument's sake, a global field with the same name, you're going to go and, number one, your current report that you're working in will not print accurately, and number two, there's a chance also, if you're creating a global field and something has changed, that all the other reports will also be incorrect. Now with that said, if you're creating a field that might be used in like 20 reports or so, then it might be easier to create a global field there. We're going to be creating mostly local fields. I'm going to show you how that works with the certain settings that go with that then. The last thing that we've got is the report elements. Obviously each report contains a few structures that need to be in place there. You've got something called the report header, which is obviously now like your heading of your report, and that would print then at the top of the first page of the report then. You've also got your primary file. That would be then the first file that the report would run through, and it would also determine the sort order of your report. So for example, if you had to have your primary file as your classification file, and you would then create a secondary loop through to your employee files, it would sort by the classification type first and then run through the employees. Whereas if you've got your primary file as employee, and then perhaps your secondary as clockings, it would then sort your report by employees, whether that then be employee number or employee name or whatever you choose that to be then. And once it's sorted that, it'll then run through your secondary loop, which might be your clockings file for argument's sake. Okay, so then that's the secondary loops, secondary files, like I mentioned now. So that could be a second file that you're looping through. So if you do not get all the information you need from the primary file, you might want to create a secondary loop in order to obtain some more information then. You've also got the lookups. which you can use to get some information. If you had to take a look, I've opened up the employee file in CScan. Now if you had to take a look at this, you will see then under your department column it's got a department code, so it does not display as admin or factory or whatever that means. So it doesn't display the description, it only displays a code. So in that case you could make a primary file the employee file, and you could create a lookup to go and see what is Department 4's description and actually print that then in your report there. So we're not going to do lookups in this video. We're going to try and split it up because there's quite a bit of information. So we initially start our basic report, and then we'll build up on that one each time and create lookups and create secondary loops and those. And obviously as we go along then. You've obviously got your details, which is your print detail of your report. Each report needs to at least have one detail, otherwise it obviously defies that object of creating a report, because it doesn't help. You've got a whole lot of loop-throughs and lookups, and in the end of the day you're not printing that information at all. And then lastly you've got your report footer, which is the same as the header, but obviously just printing at the bottom of your page, so you could print the page number there for argument's sake. So let's move over to the practical side of things. We're going to create a very basic report. Like I said, we're going to do an employee list. Now although that report already exists, I'm just going to use this as the basic, and we can build up on that then. So we need to go to reports in the configuration module and then edit reports, and we're going to go and add a new report. You'll see then it's already got the primary file detail here, except there is no primary file that has been selected, so we need to obviously fill that in. Now whatever has been selected on the left hand side here, at the bottom you will see the properties for that detail there. So if we check here, we've got a description here. Now this, if you've got your primary file selected, this is the description of the actual report. So we're going to enter employee list report, and that would be the name of our report then. Your primary source would be your primary file, and because we are getting employee information, this is the employee list report, we are going to make our primary file the employee file. Now generally speaking as well, it's usually either the employee file that's going to be your primary file, or then your classification file. It's very little that you've got another file as your primary file, but there's definitely is going to be an occasion where you want to print something else, and that your main file would be something else, because you don't want anything to do with employee information for argument's sake. Then you obviously wouldn't make that your primary file. Okay, so we've got a primary source. There is a lot of information in this property thing, so I'm only going to highlight certain things here that you need to obviously check in order to make this report work then. You've got your order by. Now you can either set this report to specifically only sort by employee number or key if you check in the list there, or by name, or then you can leave the order for the user to select that, and that means then when the operator would want to print this report, they can select whether they want it sorted by surname or by employee number, etc., etc. Okay, so and then the other thing that you need to check here is the type. So what this does is it either allows this report to be available in your reports list, or then in your payroll reports list. If I double click this, you'll see it changes to payroll and then back to text. So we're going to leave this as a text one because it's a basic report that we're creating there. And then you also need to specify whether this is a TNA report or a web report. You'll see then in the user module in your reports window, you've got the little icons to display either only TNA reports or only access reports. This will enable it in the various screens then as it's been classified here then. Okay, so then we're also going to leave this graphic as yes because we're creating a graphic report. If this was purely a text report with no images or anything like that, we could change this then to no, and obviously then we wouldn't add any images there. Then we're going to leave it as graphics because it's quite nice and easy to create one, and we can add some nice color to it, and we can drag and drop fields, which is quite nice. Okay, and then there's a few other things that you can set there, and some default font sizes and all that jazz. The only other thing that I'm going to mention here is the number of lines. If this is a text report, you need to set this number of lines. I usually make it about 59. With a graphics report, it's not too important. That doesn't affect. Basically, this indicates how many lines per page can it print before it needs to switch over to the second one. So yes, I always make it 59. With graphic reports it doesn't really matter. You can just put in that 59 as default there. Okay, so you've seen we have selected our primary source here, yet it's not displaying there yet. So what you need to do is just click on OK in order for it to save all this information, and then you can click on change again, and we will see that it has now set that primary file to employee. Now the next thing that we need to do is to go and add a print detail for this report, and obviously also add a header for the report. So let's start off with the header then. If we go to the header icon, we can go and add in a image, and let's go and look for TNA logo. And you'll see once again now, because we've selected this object here, at the bottom it's displaying the properties for that object that's been selected. So we're going to go and set the width and the height. I'm going to make this 40 by 40, and I can just move that. I'm also going to select this header here and just check the properties. I'm going to set the height slightly higher in order for me to add some headings in and some other text there. And I need to also give this print detail a name. So I'm going to just change this. Let's delete this simply to report header. Easy enough. And then in order for me to just get everything laid out nicely again, I'm going to click on OK. And I'm going to change again, and everything will be realigned. I can then go and add in text to add the report heading. So let's call this our employee, oops, one too many E's, report. You can obviously name that whatever you want that to be. If you want it to be more descriptive in in the heading of the report, or with the client's name there or whatever, you can put that in. Then the other thing that we need to set is the actual font style and the color and all that. So if you just scroll down to the bottom, you'll see there is font styles and all that. If you just double click on the value block, it'll open up a window that you can select your font. So I'm going to use let's use Arial Rounded, and I'm going to make this one 12 and green. We click on OK. Now you'll see that that field is quite small then. If we just scroll back up again, you will see there is a width and a height that you can set, and you can also set the X and Y position. If you're not sure which one is X and which is Y, just select your field, press up and down, and see which one moves. And you know that that is your Y position there. Okay, so let's set the width slightly bigger because it's cutting everything off. I'm going to simply make it 200, that I know that's long enough. And then the other thing that we can also add in a heading is a function. So let's say we want the report name here, but now we want to say this report was printed on such and such a date, and that's obviously got to be today's date because that's when you're printing that report. Now in that case you're using a function, like I said. So we're going to add a text field, and we're going to say it's printed on, and now we need to use a function. Now if you're not sure what function to use, you can click on the function tabs at the bottom, and you can go and see a few that have been listed here. You can also then move on over to our docs website, where you can also see a whole lot of functions and also see some variables, report variables there that can be used. So that is docs.cstime.com. So let's go and take a look here. I know that the function that I want to use here is the one that says today. It'll tell you in the details here what it actually does. So it returns the current date of today and formats that then accordingly. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that function. I'm going to go back to the properties of that field. I'm going to double click on this to edit it again, and I'm going to say today. Now in that one, if you sorry, I'm going to go back here to the function. You'll see that the parameters has got two rounded brackets there, so we need to put that in the end of that field in. So you can go and check all these and it'll tell you there's got to be a value and a length in that, etc, etc there. So let's go back to our properties, change this and put in our rounded brackets there. So this report will then print the name. I'm going to again set the width of this field. Let's just make it 150, and I need to go and set the text again. So let's make this Arial rounded, and I'm going to make this slightly smaller, and I'm going to choose let's make it olive as well. Let's stick to what they generally use there, and then you can obviously go and move that and align these if needs be then, so that they are all let's just move this one back. There you go. Okay, so we're happy with that. We've got that. The other thing that we're going to add in here is just a line. If you then click on where the line needs to be, it'll ask you, do you want vertical or horizontal line? I'm going to obviously create a horizontal line, and I'm going to set the width to 800, and then you can obviously go and position that line however needs to be there. Okay, so once I'm happy with that, then we need to obviously go and print some information. So we need to print the employee information in terms of names and surnames and all that. We need to also print the headings at the top. So you can either then, if you're going to add a print detail, you can either go and add in the headings at the bottom here and say, you know, like name, colon, and it'll have the actual employee's name and all that information. Or you can simply go and add these into the header section here, which means it'll only print once at the top of the list, which is what I'm going to do, otherwise it could get slightly messy. So let's do that first. Let's go and add those. So we're going to add some extra details here, put in this, and I'm going to say this is name, colon. Again, go and set your font, and let's say that, and we're going to make it 10, and let's make it navy. Okay, and we can just move that however we want. Come to think of it, we want the employee number first, so I'm going to move that there. And because I'm lazy, I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it, because all my font colors have been set and everything already. And I'm just going to go and edit this to say emp number, and then we've got the name. Okay, so there we've got our headings. Again, we can check alignment, all that jazz. Let's move over to our print detail. Now you'll see I did add one here, but what you need to make sure is that your tree structure is actually correct. So you'll see that this one isn't actually branching off from the primary file. So what you need to do is highlight that print detail and move it one right, and you'll see immediately it'll fall under the primary file there. Obviously your header is above that file because it's printing at, you know, at the beginning of the page, and obviously your footer will also be outside the primary file, because once everything is printed and it's run through everything it then needs to go and print that footer at the end. So what's going to happen here is it's going to open up your employee file, and it's going to run through all your employees and print each employee, and only once that's done it'll loop out of your employee file then. So just make sure that your tree structure is correct there. Okay, so we need to give this print detail a name again, so I'm going to call this emp details. There you go. And we can then go and add our fields in here to print. Now what you can do is you can either go and add in a text field there, and you can type in, you know, the information that's needed, or then you'll see, because we have selected our primary file as employee, if you click on the Fields tab at the bottom, it'll now display all the fields that are available from that file that has been loaded. If you had to go and create a secondary loop, you would see those fields would all appear here as well. So in this case we want to print the employee number, so I'm going to go and search for that, emp number. And the nice thing about graphics reports, you can drag and drop them. So we can just drag and drop that into that section there. And then also we need to go and get the employee first name and the employee last name. I actually think it falls under surname, so let's move slightly down. There you go. I'm going to show you this report. You'll see that with the way that we're printing these fields separately like this, it's going to have quite a gap between the employee name and the surname. So what we can do is we can edit this, and we can actually concatenate those two fields and remove the space behind the name, and then just add in a comma and put the surname there. So I'll show you that then in the next step that we'll do that. So let's go and look what this report looks like first. If you'd like to keep things neat, which is always recommended, you can go and check what is this this details width, and you can set the second one the same. So let's make this 1019. It's just always easier if things are aligned and are neat for the next guy that works with your report or edits it to see what's going on there. Okay, so let's go and print this detail and see what's going on here. We've got our print detail. Let me just confirm. We've got our header, we've got our primary file. I think that's it. Let's go click on OK. And let us go and print that. Now you'll see that there isn't those buttons available to select the employees in the one. Now remember, I mentioned a picture that gets used, the G@G picture. So we're going to have to go and add a local field for that in order to enable these two buttons here. You will see, however, that we selected with the primary file, we selected that the user can select the sort order. There was an order by field that we selected as user, and now it allows the user to go and say order by name or by company or employee number, whatever that may be. Okay, so I obviously can't select my employees. I'm going to leave it on screen, and let's click on start. Now you'll also see that there's quite a gap between each employee's name. This is because your print detail, the height of the print detail, is actually being set too big. So we need to go and set that so that we can remove this space here. Also, you'll see a mistake that I made, is that my date isn't actually printing there, so we need to just go and correct that, and in order for that to print there. So let's go back, let's just go and fix this. Now because the today is a function, it needs to be between the open and closed arrow brackets, or whatever you would want to call those things. Okay, so we need to ensure that the field has been put in brackets. Okay. The other thing that we need to do is go and add a local field to enable those buttons. So let's say add there, and now very specific here, you need to give this name the correct name. It's got to be group in order for it to enable those buttons. Obviously the picture, as said before, is going to be G. Now if you go and select the other tab, you can change this to G1, which is what that needs to be. If I just show you all the others, you'll see there's like your other pictures for numbers and time and all that, but we're going to select it as other, select G1, and you need to change the type to be user editable or selectable. There is only 3 types that you can select. Either the system will automatically compute this local field, or it'll be a conditional field, which means that certain conditions need to apply before this field is calculated. And then obviously thirdly is the user one, which allows the user to select that information there. Okay, so we've added that group. The last thing, like I said, is this print detail. That's a bit too big, so let's go and set this height. Now if I go and select one of these fields, you would see that the field height is 13. So what I'm going to do, because I want these names pretty close, I'm going to go and set the print details height to 15. Again, to just straighten things out, I'm going to click on OK and click on change, and just make sure that all these fields are within that print detail there. Okay, so let's go and see how this report looks now and see if we've got any improvement. Okay, so we now have our buttons that are available in order to select one employee or select all non-terminated or a group of employees. We still got our sort order, everything's fine there. We're going to click on start, and we'll see then at the top we've got our printed on, and it provides our date. And then also we do no longer have these gaps, massive gaps between the employee names. So now our report is starting to look slightly nicer. The last thing that we're going to do in this training session is just to concatenate these two fields and just remove this massive gap that's in between the names here. If you prefer it, printing like that, by all means go ahead and do that. I'm just going to show you a way that we can neaten those, and then we can move things up and you can edit those reports as be there. So let's close that, click on change. Now we've got our fields that are called directly from the employee file that we've used here, but in order for us to go and format this in a way that we would like it, we're going to have to create a local field to actually format that in our way. You can go and check in the global fields to see if there is anything funny there. I know there isn't one for the employee name, so I'm going to go and add one for the local field. Let's click on there, and we're going to call it emp name. As said before, just make sure that the name that you use here in the local field, you can always go and create a local field, which there's already one in the global field. But you want to format it differently. So let's say there's a name field in the global field, but now you want to format it differently. You can go and create a local field for this as well, but you need to ensure that the name is not the same as that of the global field there. So I'm going to call it emp name. We're going to go and set the picture. Now this is a text field. If you look at the S pictures, they are strings. So I'm going to leave this as S20. I'm happy with that. Now we're going to clip the information, but we're not going to clip it here, because what we want to do is, what clip does is basically take that field and it removes any spaces before or after that. But what we want to do is we want to actually only clip the first name, and then we want to go and print the surname, because what we want to do is there's got to be a certain amount of characters at the end of the surname, because we want to, if we're going to add in the department, in the next video, we want all those departments to be aligned again. So I want the surname section to be a certain amount of characters. So I'm not going to just simply, clip the entire emp name field. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go and add a value in, which obviously we need to specify the first name and the surname in there. But I'm also going to add the clip function only to the first name. So I'm going to copy and paste in the value here, once again, simply because I'm lazy and I don't want to type this whole thing out. So you'll see there is the clip function here, and we've put in brackets that we're only going to clip the first name. We've then gone and added a comma, which is inverted commas. Obviously the inverted commas won't print. This allows the field to be concatenated with a comma in between, and then we're going to print the emp surname field there. Okay, so once you're happy with that, you just click on OK, and now what you need to do is go and print this local field in your report. So instead of us printing the first name and the surname, we're only going to print the emp name field. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually select that field, and I'm simply going to go and change the value of that. So we're going to make it emp name, and we're going to enter that. So let's go and see how that looks now. And let's click on print, and let's start that. You'll see immediately now it's put the two together, but now you'll see that the surnames of certain employees are actually being cut off. That's because I've only set it to S20, so there is a string value of 20 there, so I need to just go and enlarge that. Now if you're not quite sure who might have the longest surname, you can go and set this to 40 if you want to, or whatever that may be. Just remember that whatever field you are printing after that will only print at the end of those 30 characters then. Okay, so let's click on OK, and one last print just to see what that looks like, and we still need to enlarge that slightly more. Okay, so you can obviously go and format it and go and move these names up slightly, do that however you want. Change the text. You'll see we didn't actually even go and edit the format of the text of these fields that we're printing here, so you need to confirm that all those text fonts are the same size and are the same type of font, etc., etc. So in the next video what we'll do is we're going to add a lookup for the department, and then we're also going to create a loop through clockings and extend this report slightly so that we can get some more information there. I hope that you will join me next time and that we can learn so much more. Thanks. Goodbye.